Roy Holmes, Zara, Daniel, Gemma, Dominic, Lisa, Stephanie, and Rupert Bryan is the man who has done an enviable job of keeping all of these guys on the camera and up to speed. It is, of course, the director of the piece as well. So, wow. Look at them. So welcome to Birmingham once again. Welcome to Memorabilia. The new trailer looks pretty awesome. And the scene looks cool too. So what can you tell those people that have just seen it about the hike? Not long, that.
Well, Rupert works that bit out. The scene is obviously the first time both groups meet each other. So there's the group of girls, the scene you can see here, and there's the group of guys, and they don't meet until, I guess, sort of 20-25 minutes into the film, and that's really about the first time they meet each other.
1, 2, testing. That's great. It's relentless. It's a relentless horror film. That's the best way of describing it. It starts off like a mild tomato soup and ends up in a chicken jalfrezi, extra hot and spicy. I like food, so I'll just kind of make analogies to food. But no, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for young or elderly.
And it's filmed in Britain and it's filmed outdoors as well. Now, what were the particular challenges for all of you that were acting in this? Because, I mean, outdoors, the weather can be kind of a pain in the backside. So what were the particular challenges that you all faced when you're filming it?
It was really, really cold when we were filming. We started off filming and it was quite warm and nice, and I sort of ran to the costume that I quite liked, with a little crop top and everything. And then it got really cold and really wintry, and we still had to carry on and everything, so that was like a massive challenge. And the animals we came across on the journey, the snakes, the insects, the frogs, everything, that kind of stuff, that was pretty grim as well.
Quite a few frogs. Yes, the frogs. I think it was really difficult for Sarah when she had a scene when she was to swim in a freezing water.
The water scene, when you see that water was absolutely freezing cold. I remember filming that day in Wales, and know that these guys decided to jump in as well, so they felt the brunt of that as well. So the water scene was definitely a memorable one for me, but also the cold weather we were shooting. We started shooting in the summer, and did some pick-up scenes in the winter. And obviously the costumes that we wore didn't change, so yeah, that was pretty grim.
The biggest part of then filming in winter was, because obviously, you know, it does take a while to shoot a film like this. When we were shooting in sort of October to January, that was pretty much the hardest point. There was obviously a few breaks in that, but in January it did actually snow on 2 nights that we were filming. And so obviously, I mean, everyone's pretty scantily clad, but the girls especially are in shorts or, you know, crop tops or vests or whatever else. You know, so the poor girls would be sort of huddling around a fire or, you know, keeping these big jackets on that they shoot and don't get cold. So it's pretty tough.
I was in the Winnebago, so I have no idea what it was like. We didn't have a Winnebago.
Tough thing for me was sort of filming all through the night. So you get picked up at like 7 or 8 and then film through till 7 or 8 in the morning when the sun's coming up, and then trying to sleep like during the day in blazing sun after doing sometimes some pretty extreme and graphic scenes was not easy, so I didn't get much sleep.
What would you say was going to be the biggest challenges in making this particular film?
Barbara?
Well, okay, any of you.
Well, I think the biggest challenge was to sign up for this project with those guys.
Was the what, sorry?
I think you faced a lot of things, relatively low budget filmmaking. The exterior is tough, you know, filming for a month in the middle of the night through the woods, without a big catering and kind of warm budget. But you know, it's you know, filmmaking it at its uttermost when you've got a low budget and you're in the woods at night. So I'd say that's a pretty testing point.
I think also from the acting point of view as well, with lots of the scenes, particularly filming at night as well, are very graphic. It's a very high-paced movie, and some of the scenes are very difficult to film, especially when it's 6, 7:30 in the morning. And I think that twilight feeling as well of coming on the train back into London. You spent the whole night filming. You've had 3 makeup changes. You've been covered in mud. You're just, you know, finishing.
No, just got the train getting in here.
And then you know, seeing everyone in suits on the way to their work at 9 o'clock, and you've done 14 hours already. I think puts it in perspective.
And where did the idea behind the film come up? Where did the concept for the hike come up?
From a very sick person.
Right.
Ben Lloyd Holmes.
The idea really it was kind of a backwards generating idea. Rupert and I have been discussing for a long time about making a horror and making something that was kind of, you know, scary and fun and kind of, you know, achievable on a lower budget. And you know, we've sort of been mulling around some ideas, and we were thinking about, okay, why don't we make the monsters real? So why don't it be real people doing real things? And you know, that's something that's kind of understandable and again achievable. And then from that point, we then sort of thought, okay, real people, let's put them in a real situation. What's scary? The woods are scary because you've got less contact, less people to help you. And from there, you know, the idea just sort of, you know, spanned and got bigger and then more refined. And between Rupert and myself, we then came up with the characters and kind of went from there.
And then how did you then, you've got a lovely cast here that seem to get on very well back there down on screen. How long did it take to assemble them all?
Just found them hanging outside the office. Said, yeah, she's a postman, she's a plumber, caterer. No, you know, we had quite clear ideas of sorts of people we wanted, the sort of style and whatever, but, you know, when we sort of did initial casting, you know, sort of some people, you know, shine through more than others, and we were quite lucky really. We sort of had a few sort of people that really grabbed our attention, and so really within sort of 2 or 3 weeks we had a good idea, and then beyond that, you know, Rupert had a few good ideas of other people we could bring in, and I guess it's probably 4 weeks in total, wasn't it?
I think it's probably 4 or 5 weeks actually. But I think the main thing is that all the cast are in it because they cast well. I think we went through probably, you know, 3 or 4 characters, 3 or 4 different people for each position, and we ended up kind of at the right cast.
And for the cast, how, when you got the roles, how did you react?
I screamed down the phone very loudly with ecstatic joy. And no, but I was obviously very happy to be part of it. You know, and it was a good role. So it was very exciting, very happy to be working with such a great team as well. Can never take that away.
I don't think
My guys pay me off.
no one knew each other before as well, so I think over the filming experience and afterwards we sort of become good friends as well.
And so, you're now trying to pay her off for the compliment, I think.
That's what he does.
Okay, fair enough. And how long did it take then when you're on the set and that for all of you to kind of develop the chemistry? Because I can imagine it's like first day at a new job and you kind of like nobody knows each other. How long did it take before you began to gel and get used to working with each other?
We did like little bonding sessions, so like the boys would go off into the woods and sort of like chat about girls, and you're like, oh, I saw this girl the other day, she had a great bum, and you sort of just chat.
That's what Dan would do. We just, you know, played cards and had civil conversations where Dan would talk about bums.
Mostly. And then I think we sort of tried to segregate ourselves a little bit from the girls. They had their little girly time around the hammock and, you know, sort of chatting. And we sort of, for us...
It's funny because I don't remember doing any of that.
Yes.
I do.
We actually had these rehearsals, that's kind of the key to it. We had quite a few rehearsals whereby we went into the actual woods and went around the scenes inside the woods to get people familiar with the surroundings. During the daytime, it's very obviously different at night time, but at least it sort of got everyone familiar with each other. We had a few, you know, lucky in the summer, so we had to have a few barbecues on Sundays and weekends and evenings when we could, just to build up that sort of chemistry earlier on.
The idea was to kind of, between the rehearsals and some sort of socialising, we were trying to, A, get an idea to how people would react in the scenes, but also really get the girls sort of closer and the guys closer as they were. I'd met Dan on something before, but we hadn't met Dom. And it was really kind of a bit of sort of socialising and a bit of rehearsing, and in those, you know, sort of 2 scenarios and 2 environments, just trying to build up their groups really, so it seemed more real on screen.
We were lucky. Sorry, no. I was going to say.
Sorry. And we all lived together as well for a brief during filming, so that really helped things. You know, shared each other's hairsprays and that kind of thing. You know, not the same shower at the same time.
That does make quite a lot of difference as well. Actually, I think that we all when we were living in this house together, when we were doing, you know, long night scenes and things, being able to have that time beforehand to really got to know everyone and have that kind of natural chemistry when you have to do the more difficult, challenging scenes. You're much more comfortable with each other, and you know, really respect everyone as, you know, professionals as well.
And you've already said it's quite a dark film, it's very twisted in places, they've mentioned. How did you kind of get to that kind of material? Was there anything you had to do to get yourself in the mindset for that?
I mean, I guess it's different for every actor. I think how the film plays out, without wishing to give too much away, but how the film plays out, the situations are kind of semi-organic. So for the people that are playing the darker roles and who are sort of being the attackers, I think for those people, it's obviously a case of working themselves up and trying to put yourself in that mode. And for those who are then trying to defend themselves from what's happening, obviously it's a case of trying to bring that panic out. But I think, it's different for everyone. I'm sure everyone will have their own idea, but there was that time needed on set to try and think really carefully about what you're doing, because if you are playing Bob the barman, pick up a dishcloth, it's sort of nothing too deep, and it's quite easy to push yourself into that role. But when you're doing something where you're in a harsh environment, dealing with harsh scenes, whether it's you're being chased or you're chasing to kill someone, or you're heavily wounded or you're just terrified, you draw on personal experience and you draw on the environment, but it still takes a lot to get yourself into that mode. I mean, guys,
for me it was great to have like a little bit of isolation in the woods. You're middle of nowhere, so if you want 10-15 minutes to go and walk off on your own and just really think, and people leave you alone, that was great for me.
The fact that we were filming outside in the woods at night definitely helped. The environment was a big part of it for me personally, being able to sort of isolate yourself, like Dan said, and just get in that zone. That was a really big help, I think.
Anyone else? Just a note on that while the girls are just thinking if there's anything they wanted to add. It was just, some films, you can sort of sound a bit silly as an actor saying, I need time to go away and prepare. Some films you need it more on and some films you need it less on. And I think a film where you're making a very realistic horror, where you're not doing something that's sort of too Hollywoodized, where you're doing something that's very realistic and is very truthful about what can happen, you have to take more time to walk away and to have a real think about how you're going to do something. Because if you're doing something that's really truthful performance-wise, if you're doing something that's got to come through as real, it's either going to work or it's not. So if you don't take the time to do that, you're going to fail miserably.
I think you have to really relate to your characters and whichever kind of characters you play. But I think particularly for the people that play the darker characters as well, it's I think as people we all try and be the nicest possible, draw on our natural attributes and be as nice as we can. So the characters are deliberately focused on the nasty elements and to try and relate to why they might do these difficult and very nasty things. I think is the real focus behind it and the search for the truth in that.
And one of the things that you mentioned about filming, in fact, as you usually said at the event, is that the fact that it's more real. Is that one of the things that separates The Height from other horror movies? Is that it's more realistic in its nature rather than more glamorized and overdone?
Yeah, I think that's something we set out to do from the word go, and that's, there are a lot of great horror films out there, and, within every genre of filmmaking there is, different types of movies. And within horror, it's more often than not the case sort of come away from reality a little bit. There have been some great films over the sort of last 5-6 years that have brought more reality into the genre, but it's just something that we wanted to do and really go as far as we could with that and make it as realistic as possible. So that's maybe something that sets us apart, and it's just something we really went into quite deeply to. Ruth?
I don't like the woods. If I'm really honest, I just don't like it. It's a frightening place to make a film. It really is. I found myself scurrying around the place every 2 seconds, like turning, looking, something's behind me. It's pretty frightening. The idea is also no special, very minimal. Actually, there's hardly any visual effects or there's not your kind of big monster that's a supernatural or kind of an alien or anything like that. It's
like a giant frog is the killer. It's a giant frog.
It's very much real people doing kind of really horrible things, and I think that's something that's far more psychologically twisted than kind of an alien.
And if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to stick your hand up. You can't, do not bite. Down the front.
Hello. I've got it's a bit of a broad question really, but it's just, how do you feel about contemporary British horror generally? Do you think British horror is in a good place at the moment? Or is it in a bad place?
I think Britain is kind of historically one of the best places for horror. We kind of created the genre, if I'm honest, a long time ago. And I think, Britain is brilliant at making suspense and tales. I think far more realistic than a lot of other stuff coming from Hollywood. Hollywood is amazing, they make great films. I think Britain has really knows how to do it well. And I think if you look at films of the past 5 or 10 years, horror more so than anyone has superseded previous sales. So I think it's in a good place, I'd say.
I'd agree.
I think it's in sort of an exciting place currently, because I think even as the industry changes and as delivery platforms and how films are sold these days, and where you're watching online or video on demand and things like that, it is changing. I think more now than ever, you've got more up and coming filmmakers making things. So I guess for Britain, as you say, historically a place where a lot of big Hollywood movies are made in the UK because we've got a great pool of talent here. And I think now, more than ever, sort of some of the creatives and money is sort of starting to happen here again, and I think it's bringing the industry up more and more.
Any more questions, please, feel free to ask. So in terms of the film and the challenges that you've had making it, was there any point where you thought, I've had enough, or did you ever think,
Yes.
Day three. How did you then get over that feeling? Because I mean, when most people sit down and think, I've had enough, they don't give up. But making a film like The Height, you've obviously got to push on through it. So how did you manage to do that? Well,
In all honesty, for me, I've started, so I'll finish. Rupert and I mean, everyone worked very hard, but Rupert and I, in all honesty, often did 22, 23-hour days, and that's not an exaggeration.
We used to find Rupert asleep, sitting up at his desk, still sort of typing away, and we used to play Buckaroo.
I woke up with a flower pot on my head one day. I know, literally asleep, standing up like that, I woke up and I thought it was funny.
Sadly, this is the glamour of filmmaking. There was a lot of scrabbling to try and get things done, and in all honesty, we didn't have a massive budget and we didn't have a massive crew in place to help us get something done. So you need to do it yourself. And by about day 3, we were starting to get tired, and you've got another 30-odd days to go. And I found, I don't know what day it was probably a week in, because we were still doing the daytime shots. And I remember sitting there just thinking, I am so tired, I cannot get through this, I can't do this, what am I doing? And then I looked at the monitor. And looking at the monitor and seeing the cast in their costumes, in place, doing their scenes, that for me put me back on track. Because for all of the hardship and all of the, I'm so tired, and all the problems you get, when you see your cast doing a really good job, of something that you and your friend and colleague created, it's like magical. That sounds a really silly term to use, but it's just for me, right, I know why I'm doing it.
For me, it was having the rest of the guys, to be honest, the girls really, because we stayed in the room together, and we've known and we talk about it, and we're tired, we've had enough, but then we get back on set and get on with it, and it was just nice to have that comfort. It was almost like a family, just to have people to talk to. That was, for me, that got me through.
I second that as well. Having girls. Me and Zara were fortunate enough to be bed buddies.
We were, weren't we?
Yeah, that was something that was very special
There are
to us.
pictures of that.
But it's so true. When you form those bonds, it really, really does help you along.
I want to know what Barbara thinks.
Well, I think that we met that we were a really good, great group of people who got along, made it a lot of fun, and made it great fun, and we become friends since then. And it's always going to be a fantastic memory. It was summer, it was London, and it was difficult because it was long hours, and then sometimes we would have a night shoot, and then next day we would have to switch to the hours and go back during the day. So there was sometimes you felt exhausted because your body was obviously messed up, and hours were night day, so it was all confusing. But definitely it was a great experience.
Barbara actually said interestingly earlier, it was funny that we picked sort of like 6 or 7 people that all gone very well and all a little bit crazy. And we thought it was interesting. We wondered how they sort of came together, and then we realised it was because sort of Ben and Rupert equally as crazy and decided to pick us all.
I think also, on some of the other things, when you were shooting in the environment we were, they're obviously not easy. And at those points you start sort of wondering, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And I remember the camera team going absolutely ballistic when they saw where Rupert and I wanted them to shoot in Wales. Because it was, you probably saw in the trailer, it's a 200-foot waterfall, and it's not really designed for easy access, and that's for just walking, let alone carrying kit and that sort of thing. But for every cloud there is a silver lining. You know, you sort of sit there and you lugged all this gear and you're tired and whatever else, and it's dangerous. But then you're thinking, hang on a minute, this is our job. We're sitting at the top of this waterfall, or at the base of the waterfall, depending on where we were at that point. It's stunning. It's a beautiful summer's day. It's great fun. So, you know, seeing the good and the bad and kind of just getting on with it.
Are there any filmmakers here amongst us? Anyone who's hit on? Don't be shy, like, won't keep your hand up. Making a film is the most brilliant thing in the world, and I would recommend it. You know, as you know, pick up a camera, get a few friends, just try, and then you'll soon realise what it takes to actually make something that looks okay. It's a brilliant experience. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about people, about trust, responsibility. I think it's a great way to get people familiar with the world of filmmaking and just make one. I would say we had a good time making it. We had a really good time. We're proud about it, and brilliant cast goes a long way.
I've spoken more than enough, but I just thought of something that Rupert said then. It is really about trust and responsibility, and those are two things you can, you know, you do extend to a lot of people around you. And, you know, some people you're closer with than others, and, you know, sometimes you extend a huge amount of trust and responsibility to someone you know and trust. Like when you say, Dan, I'm trusting you to pick up the batteries for the camera, and you're going to be responsible enough to do that, and he forgot. And the only reason he got a car to drive him all the way to set rather than getting the train was for the batteries, and of course he got there and realised he didn't have them. So that's trust and responsibility.
I was going to try and defend myself, but it was just rubbish on my part.
You're bigger than that, Dan. You're bigger than that.
So when can we, the audience obviously want to know, but when can we see this? When can we get hold of it? When can we go to cinemas and see it?
I was going to Japan recently, or Malaysia. It's been, we went to Berlin, and it's been sold to a few territories already. In the UK, we have to tame the film down slightly. We've been said by censorship-wise, which is interesting enough, so we have to kind of do a recut on it before it can come out here. But it's more than likely, hopefully October, Halloween, I think, is our, that's what we're aiming.
Japan and Pan Asia has been sorted already, and that's earlier this year. That's sort of May, June, we think. Just waiting to confirm a few things there. But for us in the UK, we think it is going to be Halloweenish time. As Rupert said, we just got to deliver this slightly softer cut because apparently it's a bit too disturbing and a bit too scary.
It's a good thing, right, though, isn't it?
That's what we thought.
Surely. It's a horror film, right?
So everyone, it's too scary. Make sure you are aware of that.
At some point, Rupert, will you do a director's cut with all the horrible stuff in?
Fully uncut, your full hardcore version.
It's going to be a long movie. It's
on the home video.
Yes, I hope the answer is I hope in October time.
Cool, and we have time for one last question. This man here.
Are we going to get the extended version on DVD?
The extended version, I would have thought it'd probably be the director's cut or something. So the one that's been sold to those other territories.
With the regards to censorship and these things these days, it's not so much it wouldn't pass the DBFC. It's just we have to provide essentially a softer cut in order to satisfy those things. So we would still be able to release the full, you know, the hard cut as it were. But we also would have to deliver this softer cut. So that'll be the first one that goes out, which is still, I'm going to be honest, it's still pretty harrowing. It's still pretty brutal, and that'll be the one that goes out first. But there will be the hard cut as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a massive round of applause for our cast and the production team behind.
Thank you very much. Memorabilia. Thanks for having us.
And they are signing over their booth, which does include, I believe, one of the vehicles used in the film. Is that right?
Yeah, the Land Rover is one of the production vehicles we use, yeah.
So you'll be able to go and have a look at that. It's in the middle of the hall, just under the sign for the TV and movie zone. So once more, keep our applause going for our cast from the height.